Hello and welcome to the fourth educational mini-series presented and provided by the Berks County Area Agency on Aging. My name is Ann Bartlett. I'm the Manager of Community Outreach and Education for the agency. This fourth series is on aging programs and services here in Berks County. Our segment today will focus on two of the programs that are part of the Berks County Area Agency on Aging. The both programs today we'll be talking about will be the Ombudsman Program and the Protective Services Program. So we're going to start with talking about our Ombudsman Program, and I'd like to introduce my guests that are part of the Ombudsman Program. They are the two staff ombudsmen at the Area Agency on Aging. To my left is Lisette Mendez-Rodriguez, and next to Lisette is Manetta Maniaci. Thank you both for being here today. Appreciate your time to talk about the Ombudsman Program. All right, I'm going to start right in. Ombudsman. Okay, I know I've got it right because I work there and I am ombudsman. But could you tell us, whichever one wants to take, what is an ombudsman? What does it mean? And a little bit about what one ombudsman does.
It's a federal program that was put into place by the federal government, requiring every state to put in place in every area agency on aging throughout the state an ombudsman program that means a representative to help those who are in all kinds of facilities, be they long-term care facilities, nursing facilities, assisted living, personal care, daycare, anyone who's really dependent on a facility of any kind. We are the people, the ombudsmen, who try to help be their voice and to represent their concerns, especially if they can't themselves. But our first purpose really is to empower them to find answers themselves in trying to resolve their concerns.
Okay, let's slow down a little, and we're going to talk about each of those areas that you mentioned, because you mentioned a couple of several pieces of the Ombudsman Program. So let's clarify for folks that the Ombudsman, you mentioned long-term care facilities. So Lisette, maybe you can tell us, what do you mean? What do we mean by that?
Sure.
Where are you helping, and who are you helping in long-term care facilities?
Well, we would help those that are in long-term care facilities. That would include your personal care homes, your adult daily living centers, and of course your skilled nursing facilities. And then of course we have one independent care
Assisted
facility.
living.
Assisted living, yes.
And who are we helping there? I mean, what's our role? Who are we helping specifically in those long-term care facilities?
Our focus is really on the resident themselves. We take our direction from that resident and what they say. But in terms of who our clients are, they actually can be families and friends of residents who call us. Even the facilities themselves often call us in to help to make sure that the rights of the resident are being adhered to. So
Okay, so we're talking about, I heard a couple of words. I just heard you say that an ombudsman could be a resource. I believe you mentioned a representative. I believe there's some other words that can describe an ombudsman, such as?
Well, we're highly visible as
Okay.
well. Like Manetta mentioned, that we are resident directed. Therefore, when we're out in the facility, this makes us highly visible, and it does, or it should, improve the quality of life for these residents. And most times what happens when we go out to a facility is we'll introduce ourselves, explain the Ombudsman Program, and for those residents or family members that aren't aware as to who we are and what we do, it's a good way to also educate them as well.
Okay, so you're in the facilities, so you want to be visible, as I heard you say, so that folks in the facilities, the residents, the family members, the friends who are visiting, or even the facility staff are aware of the program and how you serve the residents, right? And you said some things about letting them know about the program, so it's educating them in general, how do you work, what goes on. And I also think, I heard you say, but I'm aware, and I like to put it in a phrase of making sure that the residents have a good quality of care at the facility, and a good quality of life. And that doesn't mean that you're caregiving at the facility. It doesn't mean that you're staffed per se at the facility. It means that you're accessible, is another word, and visible to residents, and et cetera. So how often, I guess I would ask, do you get to visit the facilities?
Well, we're required by the federal government to go in at least 4 times a year, even if there's no complaints. And I would say our visits vary from 4 to, seems like some places we're in almost every day. Lisette says she wants to start sending my mail to a certain facility. But, you know, we try to be there. We have posters in the facility so residents, people coming in can, you know, see who we are. We give out brochures. But I wanted to say that part of our focus really is on the residents' rights. So we want to make sure that they know they have privacy, they should get their mail, they should be treated with dignity and respect. Those kinds of things are our focus, although we're well versed in regulations also.
But I'm glad you pointed that out, because I think that we need to clarify that residents, although living in long-term care facilities, are people with rights, and they have rights no matter where you are, and even more so, our role is to make sure that they are followed and that the residents know their rights. Okay, one of the we also have to kind of keep I'm going to say a neutrality when there. Is that not correct? Do you want to explain to us a little bit about that?
Well, there are times where we might get a call that includes a concern that we need to be biased on. We might have our own opinion or our own beliefs, but when we're working on the behalf of that resident, we have to follow through with what that resident wants.
Okay.
I think the way we're able to serve people very often is because we don't work for the facility. You know, we don't have any conflicts of interest, so we can listen to what they have to say, in some cases investigate what's going on, and really give a very clear direction as to what should be done in this case. And I will say, when I say should, you know, our posture is one of cooperation, mediation, working together, and I think that's one of the things that differentiates us from protective services, who we'll hear from in a while, that we're not punitive. We're trying to do what's right for the resident in a way that hopefully everybody's needs are met and everybody's satisfied.
I would like to talk about that and maybe some examples of how you have helped those residents if they have raised some issues or concerns. So there's a variety of ways you serve them, though. Just sometimes it's just listening to how their day is and what's happening in the facility. Is that not correct?
Yes. Yes.
What are some other things that you might be asked for from the resident or family member?
Well, it could be all kinds of concerns. I could say I've worked with a few that are new to the facility and might not know their way around or know that there are even activities involved. Therefore, I might get a call that says, you know, mom's in a new facility and she's not getting out of the room often. And I will go out and talk with that resident if I'm able to, and that resident gives me permission to meet with them, of course, and just educate that resident on some of the things that are going on within the facility, and get them to also meet with the social worker if there's one involved. But again, it's as long as I'm resident directed, I'll go by what they say.
Okay. Manetta?
Well, I wanted to say that I try to make everyone understand that short-term rehab and short-term care is also part of long-term care.
Okay.
When we say long-term care, we're also including all those people that are coming in and out of nursing homes. And I think a lot of what we do really is help with communication. Nursing homes today, personal care homes also, and even daycare, the pace is very fast. People are coming in and out, and they're very busy, and communication is always an issue everywhere. And you know, we try to, you know, have a part in having people really understand what's going on and communicate. And I think part of that too, part of what we do is staff training. So if we have a resident that says, you know, I'm just not being treated well here, you know, they're rude to me, we can sometimes do a training of a whole facility or pick a few new employees like I did recently in a facility and talk with them specifically about specific issues in dealing with a resident.
And let me clarify, and those are issues that you mentioned as opposed to the specific resident. In other words, that remains confidential as far as the resident that may have said, this is the way they treat me. But in that education that you've gone through with the staff, you've kind of talked about a general issue without naming names because the residents themselves remain confidential information that's provided to the ombudsman.
And we try to respect confidentiality, absolutely. Although in the particular case I was referring to, I did a staff training specific to the caregivers that were working with this individual because he had some very specific problems, and we freely talked about them with his permission. Absolutely.
Okay, so it's really both. It can
Yeah.
be very specific, how to improve this individual's care because of the specific need, but then it can also be, these are key issues that seem to be coming up from several residents in that particular facility, and we can address that in a generic way, but cover those issues. What other ways can ombudsmen work in a facility, or what other avenues have they participated in at a facility?
Goodness.
Oh, wow.
The range is incredible. It really is. It's A to Z. But I did want to bring out that we help a lot of people on the phone just find their way through the maze of long-term care. It's a complicated system. People get thrown into it and have never had an experience before, and they go, I don't understand this. My mother's being discharged tomorrow and she doesn't have any services in place. You know, what's going on? You know, what do I do? So those kinds of calls are probably how we spend a great deal of our time.
Okay. And even just as resources, providing resources for folks that aren't sure where do I even start if somebody is looking for a personal care or another type of facility, right? We have resources through the agency to provide family and friends who are looking to assist somebody who needs those services.
How to shop and what to look for. Always a good idea.
And of course, we all want to know about how good the facility is. So one of the other opportunities that ombudsmen have, I don't know who wants to cover this, is kind of the inspection result, survey result. What does that mean? How does that work briefly?
Well, each skilled nursing facility is regulated by the Department of Health, and then you have the personal care homes that are regulated by the Department of Human Services. So when they go out to do their inspection, we get a call and we're then notified that they are in the facility. Now with the skilled nursing facilities, we will then meet with them for what they call a group meeting, which is the inspector will sit down with a group of residents to discuss some of their concerns. And as an ombudsman, we would just be there to take some notes. That way, when we're out again, we know what concerns to look for. And then, of course, once that is done, then we will meet again when they exit the facility to go over any deficiencies that skilled nursing facility has received. Whereas a personal care home, most times they're in the same day and out the same day, but we're also invited for their exit meeting again to just take notes and see what deficiencies they have. And if there is anyone that has questions regarding their deficiencies, facilities should have that posted in a common area, primarily as you enter the facility.
Okay.
And if not, then of course you can find that online.
So it's accessible to the public?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
We try to develop good relationships with all the inspectors also, because they use us as a resource sometimes to call us before they go and go, look, what are the residents saying about concerns or issues that they have? And, you know, we use them as a resource also to ask questions. There's regulations, and then there's interpretations of those regulations, and guidelines are always changing and moving. So
We're going to move to the one factor or one area that I do want to specifically give for a minute or two of some examples. When the resident has some issues that is raised when an ombudsman visits and wants to do something about it, something is not being done, feels that whatever this issue is not being addressed. Let's talk about how that works, you know, how we begin to help them.
Well, one of the first questions I always ask, whether it's a resident or a family member calling with a concern, is, does the facility staff know of this concern? Because what will happen is, at times, if you don't ask that, you'll find out once you're there and you meet with that resident, they haven't said anything about their concern. So that's very important that they understand that there should be some communication. Now, of course, if the resident is intimidated or has some fear of retaliation, which does exist, then we would work as the liaison to help them mediate their issue. And again, if permission is given, then we would get the necessary staff involved in that care or that concern involved and let them know what's going on and how we can work around.
So then you kind of do a little bit more from there, and I guess I'll go to Manetta then. Take us to the next step then. So Lisette said, let's say that individual has taken some steps, has tried some things, and now says, I want your help, and has signed permission for that help. Can you give me an example of something that you've looked into for a resident that might really have been the same issue for several residents?
Well, we can open a case, which begins by definitely getting the resident's permission, you know, and investigate their concern. So I'll give you an example of a resident who wasn't very good at speaking. His roommate was initially the one that brought me the concern, so I had to go to him. Found out what his concerns were, pretty much the same, but a little different. And he just wasn't getting help as much as he wanted because he wanted to get up by himself to go to the bathroom. People wouldn't come. He would get up by himself and fall. Not a good situation for his safety, not a good situation to, as his roommate says, be tortured by his bladder, you know. And,
yes, I know.
And so we talked with, I met with the unit manager and some of the aides that worked directly with him. They seemed to be, some of them actually were not quite aware of his level because it had changed recently. So there was a communication issue there in terms that aides were not, some were coming right away, others were saying, oh, he can do that himself. And so we did change that, and then finally decided that really moving him closer to the nurse's station was part of the answer, and keeping him close so that people could see when he would need to go, since he really couldn't communicate verbally very well. So as the months went by, he started looking better and better. And that gave me a feeling that something was working. I always go back and talk to the resident, do a follow-up visit, find out, you know, is this what you wanted? Is it getting better? And find out what their take is. And how many times, Lisette, do we have to go back and kind of work it again? You know, tweak it again a lot of times.
Okay. So it doesn't really just, okay, now you've got your answer and here it is and stop. Okay, we don't have a whole lot of time to continue our discussion about the Ombudsman Program, so I would like to let you know that I have up on our screen, if we can show that first slide, just to let you know that there is the Ombudsman Program, and you can contact the Berks County Area Agency on Aging at 610-478-6500 and ask for an ombudsman, and you can be connected to either Lisette or Manetta. And also to let you know, which we didn't get an opportunity to talk about, is that we have at least 13 currently trained volunteer ombudsmen who have received extensive training to also be our visibility in different facilities that they work in, are trained to handle some of the same issues, and those are folks also that can help to answer questions or move forward a situation and contact the staff ombudsman. So I'd like to let you know that our program exists. Please give us a call if you need some assistance. what I want to move now and why we're connected is the next half of the program is on the protective services program of the agency. And my guest for our protective services team is Dave Kampe, who's our protective services case manager. And welcome, Dave. Thanks for being with me.
Thanks for having me.
All righty, we're going to start right in. Can you tell us, I guess, where does, or maybe even ombudsman, where does the ombudsman, we've got some issues that worked in long-term care facilities. Is there a connection then to protective services?
There is.
Okay.
We're in long-term care facilities. We investigate allegations of abuse, neglect. The Older Adult Protective Services Act was actually designed to assist older Pennsylvanians who lack capacity to protect themselves and who are at imminent risk of abandonment, abuse, neglect, or exploitation.
Okay.
And they're for individuals age 60 and older.
Okay. And let me clarify for something before we ask those specific questions about the abuse and neglect and exploitation, et cetera, is that although you mentioned that you do go into long-term care facilities should an issue occur, which is where ombudsmen are, you are not only restricted to long-term care facilities. Is that correct?
That is correct. We are in the community. We investigate home health agencies. We investigate personal care homes, domiciliary care homes, as well as the adult daycares.
And what about just an individual who's living in our community of Berks County and there's an issue or a question whether they have been abused in some way? You would be going to an individual's home as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So since you mentioned those areas that Protective Services oversees, can you tell me a little bit about each of those categories: abuse, neglect, abandonment, exploitation? So
Well,
we're all clear on that.
Abuse is defined by the law as the occurrence of one or more of the following acts: the infliction of injury, unreasonable confinement, intimidation, or punishment with resulting physical harm, pain, or mental anguish. Neglect would be the willful deprivation by a caregiver of goods or services which are necessary to maintain physical or mental health. There's sexual harassment, rape, or abuse as defined by the Act.
Okay.
And exploitation would be the act or conduct by a caregiver or another person against an older adult's will or without the consent to obtain or get their assets.
Okay. All right. And abandonment is just that.
Correct.
Okay. We've walked away. We've left them at home. They probably have no means of transportation, getting out, getting help, and we've kind of abandoned them. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about, you used the word investigate. Can you tell me the difference, because you are an employee of the Berks County Area Agency on Aging as opposed to the police department?
Correct.
Can you help me understand a little bit about if it includes like the process of calling our agency, or
Typically, our agency's called, the intake department will take an oral report,
okay,
type it up, we will get a written report. The initial investigator usually goes to the visit unannounced.
okay,
We
and that would
wanna-
be you, or that would be
Correct.
one of yourself or your associate.
That is
okay.
correct. We want to see what the environment looks like without someone's knowledge that we're coming, or have the chance to clean someone up or the area up.
Okay.
And it's not a criminal investigation. Our goal is to reduce risk to the older adult with the least restrictive means possible.
Okay, which means if we can change something, we do as is.
We try and give them as much as they can, respect their needs and their wants. We don't try and impose upon anybody. We want to respect their wishes, but still our goal is safety. Just reduce the risk.
Okay. But, and then also, should it be a criminal offense? Should something have been, after you've done your investigation, you can also connect to the police if need be, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Typically, if we find that there's been misconduct, say in a financial exploitation case, we will make a criminal referral.
And can we just stay with that for one quick second on the financial exploitation? I know that seems to be a little bit more prevalent. I don't know if it's just in Berks County or growing in general. An example of financial exploitation so we all understand. Can you give me an example of that?
An example would be someone maybe becoming power of attorney for an individual and thinking that's a license to steal.
Okay.
That they're using the older adult's funds for themselves instead of the care of the person.
Good. Okay. Thank you. And so, what if I suspect that that's going on, and I just don't know? I might be a neighbor that I see some things, or maybe I talk to that older adult in my community and they tell me some things, but I'm not sure, or I see activity, something going on, and I don't know what to do. What do I do?
You can always call our office if you have reasonable reason to suspect that there's some form of abuse. Please feel free to give a call and report it, and it's our job to investigate.
Okay, so it's any one of those areas of abuse that you mentioned. If I think, oh, I see a caregiver, you know, who is supposed to be there because I know that the person said they hired them and they're not there. They walk away, they're not giving care, so they might be neglecting them a little bit. Or, you know, I see a relative coming in with all kinds of new equipment and cars and whatnot, but don't work. I might suspect that they're doing some kind of financial exploitation. So when I call in, do you need the person's name? How does that work?
You can remain anonymous,
Okay.
and we still will investigate.
Okay. All righty. Very good. I want to, in the last minute that we have today, ask Dave, do you have anything that you'd like to clarify or share with us as far as the whole protective services department area?
Well, some folks in the community might have the thought that we're there to take them out and place them in a nursing home. That's absolutely not the truth.
Okay.
As I said, we try and be least restrictive and respect their needs and solve the problem.
And work with them.
Yes.
Good. All right, thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate that. In the last minute that we have, I'm going to go to the next two slides just to let you know that if you want to report abuse, neglect, exploitation, or abandonment, please contact the Berks County Area Agency on Aging, again at 610-478-6500, or you can contact the Pennsylvania Department of Aging Elder Abuse Hotline, 1-800-490-8505. And last, I wanted to share, which we did not get a chance to talk about in today's session, and we had other sessions on, again, a lot of times seniors in particular are targets of scams and all kinds of other schemes. And just to let you know that if you've been a target of a scam, you can contact the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office at 1-800-441-2555, which is the consumer helpline, or www.attorneygeneral.gov. I know that we had a lot of material to cover today between the Ombudsman Program and the Protective Services Program of the Berks County Area Agency on Aging. Any questions, please call our agency. And I thank you for tuning in to another segment of the Programs and Services through the Berks County Area Agency on Aging.